Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today I am very excited to present my favorite films of 2024. Like usual, there were a ton of great films of all shapes and sizes in 2024. Everything from highly anticipated big budget releases to under the radar indie cinema, there were movies for everyone. Of course, not everything was great, but that happens every year. There are always going to be bad movies, and there are always going to be good movies. Before I get into the honorable mentions and the top 10 list, remember to quickly subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up, it's a great help, and also check out my Letterboxd, I am very active there. And as just a side tangent that I will try to not stay on for too long, I'm kind of sick of the narrative that movies aren't good anymore, or that they were better in the good old days. This is just a straight up logical fallacy and pretty much outright wrong. We tend to only remember the good stuff from the past or look at things with rose-colored glasses. Just look at the year 2015. Back in 2015, people were complaining about the quality of movies like they always do. But now we look back at that year and think of it as one of the best years for movies ever. Okay, that tangent is over. And first, I will be starting off with a bunch of honorable mentions because there were simply too many movies that I wanted to discuss before getting into the actual top 10. My first honorable mention is Longlegs. This had one of the best marketing campaigns in recent memory. They did a great job there. Now, was this the scariest movie in years? No, but it was highly engaging and the performances were terrific. Next is Rebel Ridge. This was one of the most surprising movies of the year. Netflix movies tend to be either really mediocre or straight up bad, but this year had quite a few really good ones and Rebel Ridge was definitely one of them. Aaron Pierre gives a star-making performance as the lead of this movie, and the film does a great job at making you really hate the villains. Juror number 2 is a fascinating exploration of morality. People make mistakes and those mistakes can lead to unintended consequences, and that is what this movie explores, and it ends on a classic Clint Eastwood ending that makes you question what you would do in a situation like this. Alex Garland's Civil War is a fascinating and intense experience. Of course, there was the whole discourse about whether or not the movie makes a hard political statement, and to be honest, I do wish that it made more of a significant stance one way or the other. But ultimately, this movie isn't about left versus right or conservative versus liberal. It's about division as a whole and the people that work to document horrific violence. This is a movie that leaves a lasting impact and has some of the most memorable moments of the year, especially that scene with Jesse Plemons. Hitman was a delightful and highly entertaining movie from Richard Linklater. It's clever, funny, romantic in a weird way, and Glen Powell gives quite easily his best performance here. I know not everyone loved Gladiator 2, but I certainly did. After years of mediocrity with more misses than hits in my opinion from Ridley Scott, he finally proved that he still has it. This dude can still make some epic and wildly entertaining films at his age. Is Gladiator 2 as good as the first? Of course not, and it didn't need to be. Denzel Washington and Pedro Pascal give just incredible performances here, and I especially loved the second half where the film starts going its own way with the story, rather than repeating motifs like the first half of the movie did. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was one of my most anticipated movies of the year, and it certainly did not disappoint. While I don't think it's better than the Caesar trilogy, it explores legacy and manipulation of history in a fascinating way, with great new characters and a beautiful world to explore. Honora was just excellent. For the first third, I was entertained but not exactly sure how to feel. But once the main conflict of the movie really starts, I was gripped until the final frame of the film. It is chaotic in a great way, think kind of Uncut Gems chaos. It's funny, it's clever, and it really sneaks up on you with the final scene, and is really quite heartbreaking. Mikey Madison is incredible here, and she seems like the current frontrunner for Best Actress, and I certainly would not complain if she wins. And my last honorable mention is Grounded 2, The Making of The Last of Us Part 2. This is an excellent documentary showcasing how my favorite game of all time was made. The only reason it's not on the list is that I feel like it would be a bit unfair to put this in with some other narrative films, but this was absolutely one of my favorites of the year. And yes, I'm very biased, this is about my favorite video game ever, but the documentary really explores the risks that were presented in the story, the devastating leaks that nearly ruined its reputation before it was ever launched, and the intense crunch culture that heavily affected the developers at Naughty Dog. It's a surprisingly in-depth documentary as well. There are also some movies that have been very well received that I've not seen yet, like The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, and Sing Sing. I have a feeling that none of them would make it for me, but I will eventually watch them. Okay, so now on to the actual list. My number 10 favorite film of the year is Challengers. This is by far my favorite movie from Luca Guadagnino so far. This is a surprisingly fun and tense movie about a kind of love triangle and tennis. Zendaya gives easily one of her best performances as a tennis player who is rather cold and cares more about being great at the sport than the people who actually love her. The structure is also fascinating and could have easily been made to feel messy or difficult to follow, but the editing is so tight and the script is so well written that it makes the film really entertaining and really easy to follow. It also helps that the filmmaking is top notch and it makes the tennis scenes really entertaining to watch. And of course, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's score is pulse pounding. Since my favorite score of the year has been stupidly disqualified from the Academy Awards for extremely dumb reasons, I hope this one is the one that wins. This movie as a whole is memorable and very well done. My number 9 is one of the most surprising movies of the year for me because I had little to no anticipation for it and I knew nothing about the source material at all. Wicked. Wicked is a rather astounding production. On a surface level, it's a gorgeous looking film with fantastic production design and costuming. The film also has a very immersive feel to it. It immediately draws you into the world and characters, and it also helps that even though the film is 2 hours and 40 minutes, the pacing is great, so it flies by. And I found the narrative really interesting as well. The story of unlikely friends and explorations of discrimination. Glinda and Elphaba feel like real people, especially with how their relationship plays out throughout the film. Naturally, these two characters resent each other at first because they could not be more different and are forced to live together, but something eventually clicks and their friendship becomes delightful to watch. This, of course, could not have been possible without the excellent performances from Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo. As I said in my previous video, I'm not a fan of Ariana Grande's music, nor have I ever seen her act in anything, so I was skeptical of her casting here, but at the end of the day, her performance blew me away. She's rather hilarious and brings a surprising amount of emotional depth to the character that I was not expecting. And Cynthia Erivo also gives an excellent depth to Elphaba. Oh yeah, and since Wicked is a musical, I can't talk about this movie without talking about the songs. They're all very well handled. It isn't really my type of music, and I didn't love every song, but the execution of all of these sequences are fantastic. I am very much looking forward to part 2. My 8th favorite movie of the year is The Wild Robot. To put it simply, this is a gorgeous film in pretty much every aspect. Both the story and the animation are ridiculously beautiful. I'm loving this modern era of different animation styles and experimentation. Obviously, we have the Spider-Verse movies, which take on a literal comic book look. Puss in Boots 2 definitely went for a more stylistic approach. Arcane is just insane with its animation, and also probably my favorite animated show of all time. And The Wild Robot continues this trend with what looks like literal paintings for the entire runtime. The story is a wonderful exploration of family and motherhood. I myself am not a parent, but I can imagine this story would hit even harder for parents. There are multiple moments throughout where I was definitely crying in the theater. And pretty much every character is wonderfully lovable. Roz the robot is obviously likable and is forced to reject her programming to adapt to the situations she finds herself in. Pedro Pascal's Fox character, Fink, is very funny and ultimately very heartwarming. Bright Bill's story, I would imagine, resonates with a lot of people as the odd one out of a group. And ultimately, the themes about motherhood and connection just really hit hard. I also adored the Possum family. They were hilarious.
You gotta die faster. Meningitis takes a while.
My number 7 favorite movie of the year is a movie that Netflix has criminally undermarketed and decided not to push hard for awards season, which has ultimately led it to be basically buried to the point where I've seen absolutely no one talk about it. His Three Daughters is one of the best performed and written dramas of the year. Because this movie has been buried, I'll give a brief synopsis for those who have not seen it or heard of it. His Three Daughters is a movie about three sisters, who are all separated by age and location who have to come together to care for their sick father who is about to die. If it were up to me, I would give all three leads of this film Oscar nominations because the performances in this movie hit extremely hard. Natasha Lyonne plays the adopted daughter who has been living with and caring for her father and feels the most isolated from her siblings. I found this character and performance just impeccable. It is incredibly hard to watch a parent or grandparent slowly fade before your eyes. As hard as it is to understand that someone that you love is fading away, it's an entirely different feeling when you are constantly faced with it. Carrie Coon plays a bit of the more controlling sister who is trying to handle everything to a fault and is a bit overbearing, and Elizabeth Olsen plays the calmer and nicer sister, if you can even say that, who is clearly stressed out and hurting, but is putting on a facade that seems like she has everything put together. These three actresses give stunning performances that I feel like are being overlooked by pretty much every awards body. This film displays the feeling of grief before the person in question has even died extremely well. It's a tough concept to process in real life, and even tougher to capture in film, and His Three Daughters does it magically. Having gone through both sides of being thousands of miles away as one grandparent faded, and another who lived mere miles away from me, this movie hits extremely hard for me personally. And yes, I was reduced to a puddle of tears by the end. My number 6 choice is my personal favorite animated film of the year, and that is Inside Out 2. Inside Out 2 hit me in all of the correct ways. As a massive fan of the first Inside Out, with it being my favorite Pixar movie, and just being one of the most emotionally resonant films that I've ever seen, this sequel had a lot to live up to. And while I still probably prefer the first film, Inside Out 2 is equally special. There is a reason that this film is now the highest grossing animated movie of all time. This is a film that has a lot to say about growing up, relationships, mental health, and just the concept of anxiety. I would assume that a lot of parents resonated with this story and had interesting talks with their children afterwards about the concepts presented within the film. It was probably also carried to that $1.6 billion by being extremely entertaining and funny all around. It once again carries on the clever humor about the human mind from the first film. But why was this my favorite animated movie of 2024? To put it simply, good God, this movie hits me close to home. Not to get too sappy or personal, but I struggle with anxiety pretty much every day of my life. Heck, part of the reason why I don't upload or make these videos as often as I would like to is because of that anxiety. And Inside Out 2's depiction of anxiety is eerily accurate to what I myself have experienced. Constant doubt, imagining the worst, when a positive idea is brought up, it is seemingly ignored instantly, tunnel vision or constant distraction, and constant worrying. These are all things that this movie presents, and even though I have major anxiety, I thankfully don't have panic attacks very often, but when I do, it is pretty much exactly what Riley experiences in the film. It's a combination of the mind racing so fast that it doesn't know what to do and freezing up at the same time. It is just a horrible feeling. Inside Out 2 also has a beautiful message about taking joy and experiencing joy when you can. We aren't always going to feel happy, but we should take every chance we get to feel happiness. Like when Riley finally takes a breath and plays hockey with her friends and just gets to take it all in towards the end. I think Inside Out 2 is a ridiculously beautiful film. My number 5 favorite film of 2024 is the latest I saw in theaters, and that is Robert Eggers' newest film, Nosferatu. For just a bit of background on my experience with Robert Eggers' filmography so far, it's pretty much all positive, but maybe not as high as some other film fans on the internet might have him as. I really liked The Witch, maybe not as much as some other people do, but I really enjoyed it. The Lighthouse is not really a movie for me personally, but I did enjoy it, and the performances were magnificent. I loved The Northman, no notes on that one really, and judging from the position on this list, you can obviously tell that I love Nosferatu. Horror is a really tough genre to get right, especially when it's on the slow burn side, where it focuses on atmosphere above cheap tricks. And to be honest, I don't really care if a horror movie actually scares me or not at this point, because I can't remember the last time a movie genuinely scared me. I tend to focus on the atmosphere, tension, or dread that a horror film presents, and that is where Nosferatu excels at in spades. This is a movie that feels consuming to watch, which is fitting because it's about a vampire with an unquenchable appetite. A good word for my experience watching this would be entranced. There is something unique about Nosferatu that I can't quite put my finger on, but I found it endlessly captivating. The cinematography is among the best of the year. There are many scenes where it blurs the lines between color and black and white frames. Each and every frame also feels meticulously crafted and could easily be taken and used as a painting for a wall. The performances are all excellent. Bill Skarsgård disappears into the role of Count Orlok. Not just the, oh yeah, he's great kind of disappears, but he is straight up unrecognizable. Of course, there is a hefty amount of makeup and prosthetics that change his features quite a bit, but it is also the way he physically presents himself as the Count that is equally impressive. And his voice.
It is a black omen to journey in poor health.
How is that voice coming out of that man? I don't understand. As great as Skarsgård, Nicholas Hoult, and Willem Dafoe are in this film, the real standout is Lily Rose Depp, who gives possibly my favorite performance of the year. It's between this and another performance from a movie that will come later on in this list. In my opinion, she should be the straight-up frontrunner for Best Actress. She likely won't even be nominated because the Academy is weird and doesn't respect horror for some reason, which is a shame because Depp brings all kinds of emotional and physical devotion to the role of Ellen that is rarely seen in movies nowadays. All of her physical mannerisms are completely believable and apparently were all practically done by her without any assistance, which is just insane. And you also completely buy into her mental exhaustion over the situations she is forced into. It is just a standout performance in a film full of terrific performances. The overall story of Nosferatu isn't particularly groundbreaking. After all, it is an adaptation of the Dracula story again, but it is an expertly crafted one with Egger's meticulous direction that makes every scene compelling. This version of Nosferatu is probably my favorite depiction of the Dracula story, and an experience that I will be thinking about for a long time. My number 4 was one of my most anticipated movies of the year, and one of the most satisfying movies for me personally. I adored Alien Romulus. The original Alien is my all-time favorite horror movie, and Aliens is one of my favorite action movies. The rest of the franchise has ranged from interesting but not really the best movies like Prometheus or Covenant, or just straight up garbage like Alien Resurrection. I was hoping that Romulus would be a return to form for the franchise. The trailers were excellent, and Fede Alvarez has made some great horror movies before, and this movie absolutely delivered for me. A gorgeously filmed and thrilling combination of horror and action that I adored, and have consistently gone back to since it released in the summer. Once the facehuggers start defrosting, the movie hits the gas pedal and never relents until the credits start to roll. The CGI on a certain android character is a bit rough, but other than that, this movie has gotten better for me every time I have watched it. Rain and Andy are great characters that I can't wait to see more of, especially now that a sequel has been confirmed. This is also a film with a very tightly written script. Pretty much everything has some kind of payoff by the end of the movie. Even the dumb dad jokes had a satisfying payoff in the narrative. The entire third act is thrilling and white-knuckled. Once it kicks off with the facehuggers early on, it is constant thrills, but especially that third act starting when the characters enter the nest. That whole sequence where it incorporates gravity and the elevator left me completely breathless in the theater. The final sequence is understandably divisive because of the design of the offspring, but for me, it has improved on each rewatch, and the sequence itself is god-tier suspense. The way Alvarez uses the camera in that scene along with the constant heart pounding in the score makes it one of the most intense finales of any movie in 2024. Alien Romulus is a movie that has stuck with me for months after seeing it, and that is why it is my number 4. My number 3 is Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. This is a movie that truly lives up to the name Saga. Furiosa is a sweeping and gloriously awesome epic throughout the apocalypse. It is a movie that somehow makes an already masterful Mad Max Fury Road even better. Normally, prequels run into the problem of lowering stakes, but this film avoids that by just being expertly directed. It isn't as action-packed as the likes of Fury Road, which was pretty much a 2-hour-long car chase, but the action here packs an equal punch. The war rig sequence and the bullet farm scenes are stunning and wildly ambitious set pieces. And the finale scene between Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth is riveting and one of the best scenes of the entire year. As great as Anya Taylor-Joy is as Furiosa, the real standout of the movie is Chris Hemsworth as Dementus. He gives quite easily my favorite performance of his and is one of the best villains of the year. He is both wildly entertaining to watch and needlessly cruel. But something about Hemsworth's performance gives him a deep humanity of a character that is just trying to fill a void that was left by his family. The duo of young Alila Brown and Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa were just perfect. Neither actress has much dialogue for the film, but they give piercing and compelling performances where you can't help but root for them. Furiosa is also a film that seamlessly weaves between the personal story of Furiosa and the grand-scale conflicts between the factions in the wasteland. The fact that this movie flopped as hard as it did at the box office is just a shame and hurts my soul because it is an incredibly well-made and wildly entertaining movie. My second favorite movie of the year might not necessarily be the best movie of the year, but it is a film that I adore and that I have constantly went back to and been the most consistently entertained by. Deadpool and Wolverine was by far the most fun I had at the theaters this summer. That opening night crowd, along with the movie just generally being awesome, will stick with me as one of my favorite theater experiences of all time. Naturally, I'm incredibly biased with the MCU, but I don't care. This movie just rules. It delivered everything I could have wanted. A simple and easy story to follow with enough emotion to leave a lasting impact while giving fans just about everything. They managed to bring back Hugh Jackman's Wolverine without disrespecting the ending of Logan. They managed to give Deadpool another fun story where he has just enough pathos to make the audience care about him while being ridiculously irreverent. The action is so well done, especially the two duels between Deadpool and Wolverine. And don't get me started on the bloody glory that is Deadpool and Wolverine versus the Deadpool core scene. Just glorious. Cassandra Nova was also a solid villain who was played extremely well by Emma Corrin, who was also in Nosferatu. They had a very good year this year. But most importantly, this movie is gut-bustingly funny. After my first screening, my abs were in physical pain because I had laughed so much. And the punch isn't lost on any repeat viewings in my opinion. It has been consistently and constantly funny for every single time I've watched the film. It also helps that they bring in Blade and Gambit and a couple of other characters for a couple of glorious scenes. Deadpool and Wolverine is a glorious and fun wet dream for a nerd who likes Marvel as much as I do, and that is why it is my second favorite movie of 2024. I'm very much looking forward to 2025's MCU films. Check out my most anticipated movies video for my thoughts on those movies. Marvel had a very solid year despite having only 2 big releases. Both this and Agatha All Along were terrific. Also bring back Scarlet Witch, you bastards. And my number 1 movie of 2024, it literally could not have been anything else. Dune Part 2 is by far and away, not even close, the best movie of the year. This is a movie that I have thought about nearly every day since I first saw it. Dune Part 2 is an unbelievable achievement in the art of filmmaking. An insanely epic spectacle the likes of which we haven't seen since Lord of the Rings hit the theaters. This is a movie that combines crowd-pleasing action with deep storytelling and themes. A cautionary tale of fanaticism and manipulation with interesting explorations of religious fervor. Paul, Chani, Stilgar,
Listen, Gabe!
Feyd-Rautha, the Baron, the Emperor, Lady Jessica, all of these are incredible characters and are all expertly performed. Timothée Chalamet gives possibly my favorite performance of the entire year. His delivery in the War Council scene and the final throne room scenes have sent shivers down my spine on every watch. Speaking of repeat viewings, this is a film that absolutely holds up on subsequent rewatch. I saw this movie 5 times in theaters, and all of which were in IMAX. I have never seen a movie that many times in theaters before. And in total, I've seen Dune Part 2 9 times as of the making of this video. I think that speaks to the magnificent direction from Denis Villeneuve. I stated in my review that I believed that this movie would win Best Picture. Sadly, I don't believe that it will anymore. I don't know how it's not already a lock to win Best Picture or Best Director, but whatever. That said, I swear if Villeneuve gets snubbed again, I will riot because he pulls off an insanely difficult task of adapting Dune to the screen and making it completely riveting to watch. The pacing is perfect. This is a long movie and not necessarily fast paced, but it never feels too long or like it overstays its welcome. On the technical side, Greg Fraser's cinematography is some of the best I have ever seen. This is a stunningly gorgeous movie on all fronts. Hans Zimmer's score for Dune Part 2 might just be the best he has ever done, and it is complete garbage that the score has been disqualified because I guarantee you it's better than anything else from the year. It's a masterpiece of a score. The edit of this movie is seamless and keeps the flow of the film from feeling too fast or too slow. I cannot sing the praises of Dune Part 2 enough. This isn't just the best movie of the year. It isn't just one of the best science fiction movies ever made. Dune Part 2 is just straight up one of the best movies ever made, period. And that will do it for my top 10 movies of 2024. Thank you all for watching my incoherent ramblings about my favorite films from the year. Feel free to share what your favorite movies were. There were plenty of amazing things this past year. And just remember that this is my list. It is all subjective. And quickly remember to hit that subscribe button and give the video a like. And a quick reminder of my letterbox where I am very active. Okay, bye.
If it is to be said, so it is.